All right. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Rick Eberhardt. I'll be emceeing the presentations today. I'm the studio manager for the MIT Game Lab, and I worked on the PlayLabs Accelerator this summer. Our agenda today, we're going to have intros about PlayLabs itself and what we do and why we exist between now and about 6:30. Our companies will give their pitches from 6:30 to about 8 o'clock. And then afterwards, we'll have hands-on demos and networking outside around the corner, which some of you probably have seen as you came in. So, PlayLabs at MIT is a collaboration between three groups, the MIT Game Lab, Bayview Labs, and Seraph. And someone from each group will come up and talk a little bit about our parts of the collaboration. And we're for playful tech startups, meaning startups working in playful technology, which will be discussed more by our executive director, Riz Verk, later in the program. So first, I'd like to bring up Scott Osterweil, creative director for the MIT Game Lab and Education Arcade.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks to everyone for coming. The MIT Game Lab, MIT has a long tradition in history in games. It's sometimes argued that the first video game was invented here, Space Wars, in 1961, actually on the premises of the MIT Model Railroad Club. But we certainly have been studying games. Some form of sort of serious game studies has happened here at MIT since roughly 2000. When we started the Education Arcade and then later the Game Lab in 2006. And I don't know, I'm just out of curiosity, how many people in the room are affiliated with MIT? Just so you show of hands. So a fair number who aren't, so it's worth just saying a word or two about MIT. I don't know how many of you know this, but there was a morning, I think it was in 1986, when I woke up to the radio, which talked about traffic being stalled on Memorial Drive because everyone was stopping to stare at a police cruiser with lights flashing on the top of the MIT dome that had somehow gotten there overnight. That was just, for my mind, just the single best of many hacks that have been done at MIT over the years. Hack is the MIT term for what are really very elaborate, well-engineered practical jokes. And MIT has a very long history of it. There's even an exhibit about it in the Status Center if you're interested. But the reason I mention it is that it's not a coincidence that hacks or practical jokes are so much a part of the MIT culture. It's not as if it's just a coincidence that we have these brilliant future engineers and we have these playful jokesters. I would like to argue that great engineering is always playful. That the joke, the playfulness is as much part of MIT's DNA as the engineering is, because they really go hand in hand. And so it's really, there are lots of incubators around the world, but I think it's only natural that MIT should be the site of an incubator that emphasizes playfulness. And so with that, again, I want to thank you for coming and turn the program over to our other speakers. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to bring up Tuff Yen from Seraph Group.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tuff Yen. I'm the founder of Seraph Group, which really is a super angel fund group, the first global angel fund group that we know of. And I'm also the inventor of this thing called Structured Angel Fund, which is a design for high net worth individual angel to invest more effectively, efficiently, and profitably. How I met Riz, and I had the fortune to have many distinguished men and women who joined Seraph Group over the last 14 years, and Riz is one of them. And so when he brought up the idea about Accelerator on MIT campus, and I said, I'll be more than proud to be your first investor. So we started this last year, and we continue to do this year and plan to do it in the next 3-4 years. Before I talk a little bit more about the PlayLab program, I want to take this opportunity to give you a little plug about Seraph, because the message goes to the audience, the entrepreneurs and the investor online or in the audience. So we believe that investment is a group sport. We also believe the entrepreneur, in addition to capital network, they need support advice all along the way. So I built an organization where we have people who found a company like Riz, the author of Lean Startup, all the way to the Fortune 500 CEOs. These are networking investors that whenever we back a company, these networks are available for you. So wherever you started at the beginning, all the way till you exit. And we look forward to continue to support MIT for the foreseeable future. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the program overview. I see many returning people. This is an Accelerator. For those of you who are not familiar with that, is that 8-week program in the summer. The Accelerator provided $20,000 startup capital, and we packed the 8-week program with a weekly seminars, speaker series, mentorship, discussion. And we have the fortunate to bring together some really, really world-class advisors and mentors, in addition to the MIT staff, which later on Rick would introduce the business mentor. And through this program, I'm sure that we have testimony from people who participated in this. This is a very, well-designed program. And I tell you, I've seen probably more than 150 accelerators. This ranked the top 3. Okay. Now, in addition to the funding and office spaces, we have a demo and also provide ongoing support afterwards. With that said, I wanted to tell you how excited this second batch versus the first one, because I keep thinking the next year we got a better batch. Now, I'm not going to go through the detail, but give you a little high level where some of the first is taking place this year. For example, we have a casino game playing through augmented reality, promising you it's going to be very exciting, brand new experience, one of the fastest growing segment. We have a one-on-one and group-on-group competition through gaming and win real prizes. People like me who are not professional, top 5%, finally have a place to go. We have a conversation artificial intelligence platform that will give personality and character to smart devices in the future to helping brand companies to interact with you. Those days are very close by. We have super developer building the wallet for multi-cryptocurrency embedded into one of the most popular messenger telegram in the world. And we have someone who's going to bring a very challenging web lab learning experience in school onto a 3D platform, promising you will never see anything. I've never seen anything like this before. So I want to invite all of you to support the MIT community, potentially specifically for all the investor. Just give you a data point. Last year, we have 13 companies. We have 1 acquisition finalized. We turned the entire investment into the MIT PlayLab. And we still have 5, 6 companies possibly moving forward. So for those people who are engaging with us, we invite you to meet with me afterwards to see how you can participate in supporting this community. So with that said, I'm going to pass back to Rick to tell you about the business mentor and the rest of the introduction.
Thanks, Steph. So I'd like to give a special thanks to our hands-on business mentors. These are folks who worked with our groups, worked them through their pitch over and over and over again. You're going to see some really polished stuff today, but also really thought through all the different things that are going on in the PlayLabs. We'd like to think of this as an MBA in 8 weeks, is what actually one of our participants told me. So it feels that way too. So Raj, Irfan, and Ace, thank you so much. I'd also like to give special thanks to my colleagues from the MIT Game Lab who mentored our groups in product design and user interface development. We're a bunch of game developers. We like play, we like fun, and that often means we know what users like to do as well, and we know what they don't like to do. So we gave them some really great advice on some of the user interface and user experience aspects of their work, but also from our own experience and our own backgrounds as well. So thank you, Sarah, Philip, Andrew, and Michael for your support. And then I'd like to thank our sponsors for Batch 2. Theta is a blockchain and top 100 cryptocurrency built for decentralized video streaming infrastructure, and we're really happy to have them as a sponsor. Colopal Next is the venture capital arm of Japanese video game company Colopal. They're focused on investing in next-generation entertainment applications, and we're glad they're part of PlayLabs this summer. Makers Fund is a new $200 million fund based on the West Coast, whose sole focus is on interactive entertainment, which matches our focus at PlayLabs. And last, but of course not least, Toscanini's is known as Boston's best ice cream. Yeah, it is. And provided free ice cream for our team. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors. And next, I'd like to give the last word of our intro to Riz Virk, the executive director and founder of PlayLabs.
Hello, I'm Riz Virk, executive director of the PlayLabs Accelerator, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our second annual demo day for the Summer Accelerator, which is held here at MIT. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person today, but I did want to say a few words about why we started the Accelerator, why we structured it the way that we did, why we're focused on playful technologies, and then of course we'll get to the main event, which is the pitches from our great set of companies that we have in our second batch. So, why did we start the PlayLabs Accelerator? The first reason is that we wanted to create a home for startups that were utilizing playful technologies. We define that very broadly as video game or entertainment technologies that can really be applied in any industry. In fact, I would contend that much of the software and hardware we use today owes a debt of gratitude to the video games of the past. For example, one of the very first graphical user interfaces anywhere was from a game called Space War, which was built on a mainframe computer here at MIT back in the 1960s. Today's chatbots and natural language processing have their roots within the adventure games of the 1970s and 1980s, as well as the multi-user dungeons from the early days of the internet. Today, virtual reality and augmented reality are fairly common technologies, but they also owe a debt of gratitude to the video games of the past, both in terms of first-person rendering perspective, as well as the idea of a heads-up display or a way to augment what the player is seeing from that perspective. But that's not all. Today, artificial intelligence and machine learning are all the rage, as many of you know. Well, the first practical artificial intelligence computer was really a machine built by Professor Claude Shannon here at MIT back in the 1950s. And its purpose was to play games. In fact, it was to play chess. If you look closely at this image, you can see the little chess pieces on top there. In fact, the ability of a computer to play against a human has been one of the benchmarks of the development of artificial intelligence with both traditional games and today computers are playing humans in esports or computer games as well, which is an interesting twist. The first time I ever saw an example of machine learning anything was in the 1980s movie War Games, where the computer played tic-tac-toe against itself in order to teach itself that there are some games like global thermonuclear war where there is no winner. So we may actually owe a lot to this type of machine learning in the future. Of course, CPUs and GPUs have been driven by the needs of video games, going all the way back to games like Space Invaders from the 1970s or Infinity Blade, which really pushed the limits of the iPhone as it was developing its graphics engine processing capabilities. This year, we added blockchain and cryptocurrency as one of the playful technologies in our cohort. Now, you might ask, what does blockchain or crypto have to do with playful technologies? Quite a bit. Before there was digital currency in the form of Bitcoin and Ether, the most widely traded digital currencies existed within virtual economies, within video games like World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, or Second Life. In fact, the whole idea of a crypto-based blockchain, which is a trustless system, is based on a field called game theory, where you play out what each of the players will do, and that's how you validate, whether a cryptocurrency really, and a blockchain is really a trustless system. And not many people know this, but the biggest Bitcoin exchange in the early days was a site called Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox actually stood for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange originally. So it also had its origins within the gaming industry. So the second reason we started PlayLabs was based on my own experience with my very first startup when I graduated from MIT. And back then we had no office space. We started in our living room. We were the proverbial two guys in a garage, even though it's a little cold in New England garages, so we were in our living room. We had no money. We literally had to borrow $5,000 from my co-founder Mitch's parents so that we could go to our first conference. And we would buy computers and return them within 30 days just so that we would have some extra machines to test our software. We also had very little access to mentors. And so when we structured PlayLabs, we wanted to give the companies just enough money so that they didn't have to go out and buy and return computers like we did. And they had a little bit of money for infrastructure and travel. But really, we wanted to see if we could take out some of the kinks in the road to success. Right? Many people think that startups are a straight line where you introduce a product and everything is successful. But the reality is there are many twists and turns along the way. And so we wanted our accelerator to be a place where we could reduce some of those twists and turns as we got the companies to graduate and be on their way on their great startup adventure. Which brings me to the theme of PlayLabs. Now there's many different metaphors people use for business and for startups, some like war or competitive metaphors. At PlayLabs, we're a playful group, and we believe that the right theme is that building a startup is like taking an entrepreneurial adventure like an Indiana Jones film. Now, many of you may have seen the films Raiders of the Lost Ark or his other films, and you'll notice in those films, wouldn't it be nice if Indy got a map right at the beginning of the film and it just told him exactly where the treasure was? And all he had to do was just go there and pick up the treasure. Well, that's never how it works, is it? First of all, it wouldn't make for a very interesting movie. Secondly, the way it works is that Indy receives a clue. He follows that clue, and where does that lead him? To the very next clue. And where does that lead him? To the very next clue. And that really is the heart of the entrepreneurial journey. We wanted to help our startups navigate the clues that will take them to their own unique version of success. The second reason I like this metaphor is that you'll notice there are all these guys surrounding Indiana Jones. I call them colorful characters. Some of them are there to help Indy on his adventure. Some are there to hinder him as obstacles and competitors. And some are a bit more ambiguous. It seems like they're there to help, but they really have their own motives. Well, it turns out that's true on the entrepreneurial journey as well. Entrepreneurs encounter all kinds of advisors and competitors and colorful characters. And we're hoping that many of you in the audience will become colorful characters who can help our entrepreneurs along the way in their journey. I also like to use the stages of the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell because it's very similar to how a startup adventure goes. An entrepreneur hears a call to adventure. They might refuse the call. They jump across the threshold, equip themselves for the journey with a team of adventurers, find themselves on the road of trials, and almost every startup adventure has a visit to the underworld, where you have to deal not just with external factors, but with your own internal demons of greed, hope, and emotions. And if you're able to come through that as an entrepreneur, you can find the treasure. The treasure is not always a financial reward, although obviously startups can be financially rewarding. It can also be a personal reward. Just like at the end of The Lord of the Rings, when the hobbits had to go back to the Shire, anyone who goes through the startup journey will find themselves a different person. And that's the essence of the theme we have at PlayLabs for our teams of adventurers. So with that said, I'd like to thank you again for joining us at the second annual Demo Day and hope that you will want to join some of our teams of adventurers on their great journeys ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Riz. All right, so we've got 10 teams. We're going to do 2 groups of 5. Each team will give their pitch one after the other. We're not going to do Q&A in between. We ask that you save all your questions for your teams when you go to see their demos in person in the foyer around the corner. We'll have a brief intermission in between, about 10 minutes or so, for folks to take a break. and then we'll do that last 5, and we'll do some closing remarks. I'll mention this again at the end, but please take a look at our website. You can see our mailing list. You can sign up for more information about the website, and info@playlabs.tv if you'd like to get intros to any of our companies. And if you're watching online, there's a questionnaire to the right of you. Feel free to fill it out if any questions you might have or contacts you want to make with any of our companies.